Every piece of gold you have ever seen / is older than the Earth / not metaphorically, literally. Whoa. Every atom of gold on this planet was forged billions of years ago / in the death of something enormous. Dead stars slamming together at a third the speed of light. Temperatures reaching billions of degrees. In that violence, element 79 was scattered into space. The gold in a wedding ring was made before the solar system existed. So how did a species of upright apes walking around on a small rocky planet end up finding pieces of a dead star in a riverbed? That question has an answer. The answer is not the interesting part. What they did with it once they found it / that is the part nobody expects. Gold cannot be made inside an ordinary star. Carbon can, oxygen can, iron can. Gold requires something far more extreme, a flood of free neutrons, captured by lighter nuclei faster than those nuclei can decay. Astrophysicists call it the R process. And for decades it was purely theoretical. Then we watched it happen. On August 17th, 2017, the LIGO and Virgo gravitational wave detectors observed two neutron stars merging 130 million light-years away. The afterglow carried the chemical signature of heavy element production. Estimates put the yield at something like 10 Earth masses of heavy elements, one collision. For 8 years, that was the story. Gold comes from colliding neutron stars. In April of 2025, that story got bigger. A team led by Anirudh Patel at Columbia University found the same signature in something else entirely. A flare / not a collision, a single eruption on the surface of a magnetar, one of the most magnetized objects in existence. Their estimate is that between 1 and 10% of the heavy elements in our galaxy / were made this way, which means the honest version of the answer is layered. What we have measured, 2 events, one merger, one flare, both producing heavy elements. What we are inferring, the proportions. What remains genuinely open, whether there are other forges we have not found yet. Either way, none of it explains how any of that ended up in a riverbed. When Earth formed 4.6 billion years ago, it was a molten ball of rock and metal. Dense elements like gold and platinum sank toward the center during a process called the iron catastrophe. They were pulled down by gravity / into what became the core. Estimates vary, but there is likely enough gold down there to coat the entire surface of the planet in a layer you could stand on. It is there. We cannot get to it. Not with drills, not with mines, not with anything that exists. So the gold humans found / was not Earth's original gold. Flash analysis of tungsten isotopes in 3.8 billion-year-old rocks from Greenland, published in Nature in 2011 by Matthias Wilbold and colleagues at Bristol, supports the idea that the accessible metals arrived later, delivered by objects that struck the planet after the core had already formed, slashed, and sealed. The timing and the scale of that late delivery are still argued over. The signature in the rock is not. Now, why did humans find gold before they found almost anything else metallic? The answer sounds too simple to matter. Gold is lazy. Not in a moral sense, in a chemical one. Gold has 79 protons and 79 electrons, and the arrangement of those electrons makes it almost completely. Inert slash. It does not react with oxygen. 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 It does not react with oxygen over the course of a lifetime. Mass. A gold nugget sitting in a riverbed slash looks exactly the same today as it did the day it eroded out of its parent rock. It could sit there for 1,000,000 years and you would not be able to tell. Hold on to that. It sounds like a chemistry fact. It is not. 20 minutes from now, it is going to explain something about human behavior that chemistry has no business explaining. Every other metal that exists in meaningful quantities near the surface of this planet hides. Copper turns green, iron turns red and crumbles, silver blackens. Tin and lead sit locked inside ores that look like ordinary rocks, and getting them out requires furnaces, charcoal, temperatures above 1,000 degrees, and thousands of years of accumulated metallurgical knowledge that nobody had yet. Gold requires you to look down. Hi, that is the entire barrier to entry. No smelting, no reduction, no knowledge of any kind. A 10-year-old with no language for what they are seeing can find gold, because gold does not need to be extracted from anything. It is already itself. The second thing is weight. Gold runs 19.3 grams per cubic centimeter, about 70% heavier than lead. When water flows over rock containing gold, it erodes the metal out and carries it downstream. Because gold is so much heavier than the sand and gravel around it, it settles, it drops. It collects on the inside bends of rivers where the current slows, behind boulders, in crevices of bedrock, in the quiet pools where heavy particles gather. Which puts it in exactly the places humans were already standing. Rivers are where you drink. Rivers are where you fish. Gold accumulates at the precise locations our species had every reason to visit daily for 100,000 years. You do not need a geology degree to notice gold. You need eyes. So picture the most likely version of how this actually happened. Some human, thousands of years before the first written record of anything, is kneeling at a river, drinking, washing, fishing, doing something routine and forgettable. They notice something at the bottom of the waters that is the wrong color. Too bright, too yellow. They reach down and pick it up. It is heavy. In their hand, heavier than any stone that size should be. It is smooth. It does not crumble. They squeeze it and it bends. They hit it with a rock and it flattens instead of shattering. They cannot break it. They cannot scratch it with a stone tool. It just sits there in their palm, yellow and warm and permanent. Looking like a piece of the sun. We do not know who that person was. We do not know where they were standing. We do not know the year, the season, or the century. We know it happened because the archaeological record shows us what came after. The oldest processed gold artifacts ever found come from a place most people have never heard of. The Varna necropolis, on the western shore of the Black Sea, in Bulgaria. In 1972, an excavator operator named Raicho Marinov was digging a trench for an electrical cable near the city of Varna, when his machine cut into something that did not belong in that soil. Archaeologist Ivan Ivanov of the Varna Archaeological Museum took over, and what came out of the ground rewrote the timeline of human civilization. A cemetery. Over 300 graves, inside them slash more than 3,000. Gold objects slash totaling roughly 6 kilograms. 6 kilograms of gold, dated between 4560 slash and 4450 BC, more than 6,500 years ago, 2 millennia before the first pyramid, 3 millennia before Homer. The gold was not spread evenly. Most graves at Varna held little or none. Then there is Grave 43. Wook, a single male burial. The excavator's assessment, which is difficult to verify independently but has never been seriously challenged, is that this one grave held more worked gold than had been found in the entire rest of the world for that period, combined. A gold scepter, a gold breastplate, rings, bracelets, earrings, decorative plaques. Even the man's genitals had been sheathed in gold. 6,500 years ago, slash on the edge of the Black Sea, somebody was already important enough to take that much wealth into the ground. Sit with what that sentence actually says. He did not spend it. He did not trade it. He did not pass it to his children. He took it down with him into the dirt, permanently out of circulation, in a society where every single object had to be made by hand. Gold does not feed you. It does not keep you warm. You cannot cut meat with it or scrape a hide. So why would a culture with that little surplus hand 6 kilograms of anything to a corpse? Hold that question. I am not going to answer it yet, because the obvious answers do not survive contact with the object. Gold is soft. Slash, it registers 2.5 to 3 on the Mohs hardness scale, slash, barely harder than a fingernail. It makes a terrible tool and a worse weapon. In purely practical terms, for a human being living without industrial technology, gold is close to the most useless material they could possibly encounter. There is a partial answer in the psychology. In 2014, Katrian Meert, Mario Pandelaire, and Vanessa Patrick published a study in the Journal of Consumer Psychology testing why people are drawn to glossy surfaces. Slash, across 6 experiments, slash, including experiments with young children, they found the preference held, slash, even when social explanations were stripped away. Their hypothesis is that it evolved as a proxy for water detection. Reflective surfaces in a natural environment usually mean water, and water means survival. That study is about paper and packaging. It never mentions gold, and it would be dishonest to present it as though it did. It also only answers half the question. It explains why a human being would look at gold, slash, it does not explain why a human being would bury. Move forward 3,000 years, slash, to a civilization that left us writing. In ancient Egypt, slash, gold was called nub. Slash, it was not understood as decoration. It was understood as the flesh of the sun god Ra, slash, the physical substance of divinity. The region to Egypt's south, where the richest deposits lay, was called Nubia, almost certainly from that word. Gold in Egypt was not jewelry. Gold was theology. Slash, pharaohs were buried in it because they were becoming gods, slash, gods were made of sunlight, and sunlight was made of gold. On November 4th, 1922, slash, Howard Carter's workmen uncovered a single stone step in the Valley of the Kings. Carter breached the tomb 3 weeks later. It took another 3 years of clearing before anyone reached the innermost coffin, and when they did, in October of 1925, It was solid gold. 110 kilograms of it. The death mask alone weighed over 3,000 years underground, and it looked polished that morning. Because that is what gold does. It waits. There is a version of this story where the conclusion writes itself. Gold is beautiful, / gold is permanent, humans are humans, / therefore every culture that could find gold wanted gold. That version is wrong. / and there is one continent that proves it. Australia sits on some of the richest gold deposits on Earth. Aboriginal Australians have lived there for around 65,000 years. With an unbroken record of sophisticated technology, trade networks running thousands of kilometers, and pigments and stone traded across the entire landmass. There is no solid evidence they worked gold before European contact. Other materials carried enormous cultural weight, / ochre, pearl shell, particular stone. Gold was not among them. 65,000 years of proximity. No gold rush. So whatever drove Varna, it was not a universal human instinct, which makes the question sharper. Not softer. Go east to Mesopotamia. Between 1922 and 1934, British archaeologist Leonard Woolley excavated the royal tombs of Ur in what is now southern Iraq. The burials date to roughly 2600 to 2450 BC. The helmet of Meskelamdug was beaten from a single sheet of gold / not assembled, not soldered, hammered out of one piece, with individual strands of hair worked into the surface, each one raised by a craftsman leaning over the metal with a punch, one hair at a time. Queen Puabi's headdress / gold leaves, ribbons, rings, a dagger with a solid gold blade, and a sheath inlaid with lapis lazuli. Alongside the rulers, dozens of attendants, many wearing gold. CT analysis published in 2011 found evidence of blunt force trauma to several skulls, suggesting they were killed at the time of the burial rather than dying voluntarily, as Woolley had assumed. Oaf, human sacrifice, dressed in gold, sent into the ground. Again. Downward. / never outward. Now cross the Atlantic to the highlands of what is now Colombia. The Muisca had a ceremony for the inauguration of a new chief at Lake Guatavita. The man was stripped, his body coated in a resin, and powdered gold was blown onto the wet surface until he was gold from scalp to heel. He was rowed out on a raft to the center of the lake at dawn, with the cold coming off the water, and he washed himself. The dust lifted off his skin and drifted down into the dark. The gold was thrown away. That was the point. When Spanish conquistadors heard the story, they called him El Dorado, the Golden One, and spent decades hunting for a city that did not exist. They never found it, because there was never a hoard. There was a lake with gold at the bottom of it, put there on purpose. The Muisca raft, a small gold model of that ceremony, was found in a cave near Pasca in 1969. It sits today in the Gold Museum in Bogota, among more than 30,000 gold objects. Further south, the Inca called gold the sweat of the sun. When Pizarro captured the Emperor Atahualpa in 1532, the ransom was a room filled with gold, roughly 6.7 meters by 5.2, stacked to a height of 2.7. Atahualpa paid it. Pizarro killed him anyway. At some point, humans stopped waiting for rivers to deliver. The oldest gold mine currently known sits at Sakdrisi, in the Republic of Georgia. The excavation, led by Thomas Stollner of the German Mining Museum in Bochum, dates it to roughly the 4th millennium BC, though both the dating and the claim to be oldest have been contested since. The technique was fire setting. You build a fire against the rock face and let it burn for hours until the stone is hot through. Then you throw cold water on it. The rock cracks with a sound like something breaking underground, and you go in with stone hammers while it is still steaming and pull out what the heat loosened. Moke in a tunnel with no ventilation, wet stone, men working in the dark by the light of the same fire that was breaking the mountain. The gold no longer came to them. They went and got it. Which brings us to the strangest detail in this entire story. In Colchis, roughly modern-day western Georgia, the same region, people laid sheepskins in the riverbeds, fine gold particles carried by the current caught in the greasy wool. The fleeces were pulled out heavy and dripping, hung on branches to dry stiff in the sun, then shaken out over a cloth so the flakes fell free. The Greek geographer Strabo described the practice in his Geographica, around 7 BC. Colchis is the exact kingdom where Jason sailed with the Argonauts to retrieve the Golden Fleece. The Cax. A Greek myth about a magical golden sheepskin / maybe a cultural memory of a real technology / practiced in a real place that really did produce gold. The golden fleece was not magic. It was a filter. Book. Around 600 BC / in western Anatolia, the kingdom of Lydia started stamping metal. The first Lydian coins, under King Alyattes, were not gold. They were electrum / a naturally occurring gold-silver alloy whose composition varied from lump to lump, which meant nobody could be certain what a coin was actually worth. His son Croesus solved it. Lydian metallurgists developed cementation, heating electrum with salt at high temperature, so the silver reacted with the chlorine and separated out, leaving purer gold behind. Andrew Ramage and Paul Craddock of the British Museum documented the archaeological remains of that refinery at Sardis. With that purified metal, Croesus issued reliably pure gold coinage around 550 BC. Before Croesus, gold was treasure. After Croesus, gold was money. A guaranteed weight / a guaranteed purity / a standardized shape. Every economy on Earth still runs on the idea. Then gold did something it had never done before. It moved people. January 24th, 1848. A carpenter named James Marshall / building a sawmill for John Sutter in Coloma, California, sees something glinting in the tail race channel. Within a year, roughly 300,000 people flood into California. San Francisco goes from about 1,000 residents / to 25,000 / in 2 years. 1851. Edward Hargraves, fresh back from the Californian diggings, finds gold near Bathurst in New South Wales, and Australia's population triples inside a decade. The metal that had sat there unclaimed for 65,000 years / emptying half the towns in the colony within months of a European noticing it. 1886. A prospector named George Harrison finds gold on the Witwatersrand Ridge in South Africa. Johannesburg is founded that same year, on top of the largest gold deposit ever discovered, a formation that has since yielded around 40% of all the gold ever mined. Cities overnight. Wars. Governments toppled. Indigenous communities destroyed. Go back to Grave 43 now. And to the question I left sitting there, look at the pattern across every culture we just walked through. Varna, into the ground. Tutankhamun, into the ground. Into the ground, with the attendants. Guatavita, into the water, deliberately, gone. Even the Inca, whose gold the Spanish melted into bars, had been using it for temple surfaces and burial goods, not currency. The Inca economy ran on labor and textiles, not metal. Metal. For the first 4,000 years of human contact with gold, the dominant use is not economic at all. It is funerary. The coin comes at the very end of that story. Croesus is standing at the finish line, not the start. For every year that gold has been money, it was something else for 6. So the question was never why gold became valuable. Value came late. The question is what a lump of soft yellow metal was doing in a grave. 2,000 years before anybody thought to spend it. Think about what the world looked like from inside a body that was going to die in it. Food rots within days. Wood goes soft and hollow. Cloth falls apart. Skin ages while you watch it. Bodies bloat, then collapse, then reduce to bone. And eventually the bone goes too. Copper corrodes. Iron flakes into red dust. Even stone wears down. You can see it in the riverbed. A whole landscape being ground into sand. Every single thing a human being could hold in the year 4500 BC was in the process of becoming something else. Except one. That nugget in the palm looked identical on the day they died as on the day they found it, not resistant to decay. Exempt from it. The one physical demonstration available to a prehistoric human that permanence was even possible. So they took it into the grave. Not because it was wealth, because it was the only thing in their entire world that was not going to end. And they were about to. Here is what that argument is and is not worth. What we have excavated. Gold concentrated in high-status burials across unconnected continents, thousands of years before it functioned as currency. That is solid. What we are inferring, the meaning nobody at Varna wrote anything down, and no one ever will. Which is exactly why Australia matters. 65,000 years beside the gold, and no attachment to it. Whatever happened at Varna was not human nature switching on. It was an idea. Invented separately, in scattered places, by people who kept it because it was the one material that gave nothing back and never went away. All the gold ever mined in human history every ounce from every mine and every river on every continent across roughly 7,000 years comes to about 209,000 metric tons. Melted into a single cube, and it measures around 22 meters on a side. It would fit on a tennis court. That is the entire physical output of the longest-running obsession our species has. Wars fought. Civilizations built, continents colonized, millions of lives spent digging in the dark, all for a block of metal you could park in a backyard. Every atom of it made in the death of a star, adrift for billions of years, delivered to Earth by something that fell out of the sky and left sitting in a riverbed until a human with no name bent down. Tonight, somewhere, someone is wearing a gold ring. They are probably not thinking about neutron stars. They are not thinking about Varna or Croesus or James Marshall kneeling in a tail race in California. They are wearing it because it means something to them, because someone gave it to them, or because they like the way it looks. That impulse that quiet, unreasonable attachment to a yellow metal that does nothing useful is at least 6,500 years old, probably much older, and shows no sign of stopping. Gold does not feed you. Gold does not shelter you. Gold does not keep you alive. But for as long as humans have been human, we have looked at it and seen something worth more than what it is. Something permanent in a world that is not. Maybe that is the whole point. Maybe the reason we discovered gold is the same reason we kept it. Not because it was useful, because it lasted. Wuck. And we wanted something that would